The times have changed, so has the delivery of news. We believe local news needs to be easily accessible. Hey, Owensboro, get with the times. Subscribe today at owensborotimes.com.
Hi, I'm Matt Castlen with Castlen Steel.
And I'm Daniel Dick with Daniel Dick State Farm.
And we're proud to partner with Owensboro Times.
It's never been more important than now to meet the candidates.
It's a vital part of our republic democracy for candidates to come forward and run for public office. I'm grateful for the individuals willing to run on the issues that are important to them and this community. Thank you for your willingness to serve the people of Owensboro.
Lastly, we want to thank you for joining us.
The town hall begins now.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Owensboro Times Primary Election Town Hall. I'm Jake Boswell. I'll be moderating this event over the next half hour, so thanks for joining us. First, I'd like to explain the format to everybody who has not been able to tune in to our previous forums today. Candidates drew for their spot on the stage when they got here just a few minutes ago, and they were given topics ahead of time, but as far as the specific questions we're going to be asking, they've not seen them ahead of today. Candidates are going to have 60 seconds to answer each question we give them. We have a timer on stage. They can see, I can see. We're all keeping track of that. The order in which candidates are going to respond will be reversed for each question. The person who's asked the question first will be asked the question last the next time around. Each candidate will also then be given 60 seconds to deliver a closing statement at the end of this forum. The community's input, by the way, was crucial to putting these questions together. It played a huge impact in the formation of what we're going to be asking. But here at this event, nobody in the crowd is going to be asked questions. We're not going to be taking any of them from the audience. Keep in mind, guests are not going to be not only allowed to ask candidates any questions, but they will be allowed to applaud when things are over. So the folks here at the Blue Gas Museum, please hold your applause until the end. It's now the 7th of 9 segments today. We'll be joined by 4 different candidates for Davis County, West County Commissioner. Let's go ahead and introduce you to them. We have first Chris Castlen, Dustin Warren, George Wathen, and Patrick Hayden. Now, Sharon Castle is also on the ballot. She was not able to make it this evening, but these are your candidates here this evening. And we'll start first with you, Mr. Castlen, based on our draw. And we'll start with a question that we've asked some people who are also on the ballot in a similar race. Based on the conversations that you've had with constituents, I'd imagine you've talked to plenty of them, all of you have, as you've filed your paperwork to run for office. In that time and today, what are the main issues that you've heard from them, and how do you plan to address them?
Thank you, Jake. So the main issues I've heard are, of course, number one is being public safety. And it's come about because of some of the recent issues that we had with other crimes that have occurred in Davis County that always concern people that live in an area that is their safety. Next, economic development. There's so many people that are concerned about the economic development of Davis County, just, of course, like they are nationwide. But we live in a place where we have so many assets to our location that we should be a leader in economic development and not one that has to be a follower or be as concerned as others. Another is about the leadership that we have in our fiscal court and amongst our local government, and the desire for having new ideas, new people, and wanting to have just that reinvestment into our community.
Mr. Warren, same question to you.
Most everybody I talk to, they mention safety naturally for our homes, for our children. They see that Owensboro is kind of losing the core value that we've all been brought up with. It doesn't feel as safe as it used to. They also mention infrastructure. The drainage is always an issue, naturally. Some things we can help, some things we can't. Panther Creek, from Ohio County all the way down to Curdsville, to Green River, needs to be addressed. Different infrastructure, things like that. Expansion out to 54 has been a big topic that people, it's got their eye. They want to know why we're moving away from different areas of town and going out there. Just core, the normal things that people are concerned about. Taxes, they think that our taxes are not unfair, but are we getting the best bang for our buck for our money that we're paying in on?
And Mr. Wathen, the same question to you. What have you been hearing from constituents, and how do you plan to address their concerns?
Well, I've talked to a lot of people recently, and I think I'm not sure there's one issue. It just depends on where you are in your life and what's going on. For example, myself, I've got 14 grandchildren that I want to make sure stay in Owensboro. I've got 4 out of 6 of my children are in Owensboro and staying. But everybody's concerned about safety. Different people try to blame different things on the safety issue. I think it's one of the big problems. What I have learned is because of the drugs coming across the southern border. And so now we have a lot of drugs in Owensboro. But some of the farmers I've talked to, since recently the mayor got real involved in county government and who's run for government, they're kind of worried about merger and the outer loop, which that had kind of been dead. But anyway, I think I'm about out of town.
We'll ask you
on where you are in life.
Plenty more questions to ask you too. And Mr. Hayden, same for you. What have you been hearing from people, and how do you plan to address their concerns?
Everybody I've talked to has pretty much been worried about future. I mean, it's what you hear. You talk, whether it be kids, whether it be trying to start a small business, whether it be taxes. They're worried about what direction we're headed in, and it always seems like taxes are going up when why they're never going down. You've got out-of-town investors buying up all the property around town. You got small businesses that can't get a foothold because they own everything. Owensboro has been completely silent and done nothing to solve the issue. That's the number one thing I hear from people in the construction industry. They're tired of it.
And Mr. Hayden, the first question this time around will come to you too. We've talked about what you're hearing from people. Obviously, I'd imagine each of you have heard when it comes to spending or money. If you're elected into the office of commissioner, what would be your spending priorities?
Spending priorities. I'm more about cutting than I am spending. The way it's been spent, the way it feels, and I'm a big proponent that taxes are theft, they're forced charity. That's the way it feels. There's some stuff we need to do. There's some stuff we don't need to be doing. There's fat to be trimmed. There's a lot of stuff that I would like to see. I mean, an amphitheater was mentioned earlier. That'd be really cool. There are things that Owensboro needs to do to attract bigger crowds, sporting areas where we can have volleyball tournaments and basketball tournaments. There's all kinds of stuff I would like to see. We've got to trim down before we get there. I can't spend more than I make. Why are we in debt in the first place? That's something that Owensboro really needs to grasp.
And Mr. Wathen, what about you? If you were elected, what would be your spending priorities?
Well, in the last 11 and a half years, we paid off $32 million worth of debt. We came into office, it was sitting at $46 million. And I don't know if you've done the math on that, but that saves us about $2 million a year in interest. So that's huge. I think right now we're sitting, at 14 million. We did have to borrow $5 million recently, and we raised taxes a little bit because of that. And it was because we bought a $6 million radio for all of our first responders. We were in a position where we had to do it, and so we had to make sure that was done. Also, some of the things that we've done, we've really put a lot of emphasis on infrastructure, on roads. We've done 33 miles of roads a year, so that's important, especially if you live on one of those roads. And we've helped 3 different neighborhoods get sewage to their sewer lines to their subdivisions. So some of those things, infrastructure.
What about you, Mr. Warren? As far as funding or spending priorities, what would they be?
Well, naturally, public safety. As a lot of people know, I'm a volunteer fireman of 20-plus years at St. Joseph Fire Department, where I serve currently as a captain and an EMT. So the fire service, the sheriff's department, they all need our support every chance along the way. I'd like to see additional funding so we can add for more sheriffs and detectives possibly for the drugs that are coming in that we've got to tackle. You know, we need to spend our money on projects wisely for projects that benefit everybody in the whole town, not just certain groups of people, certain sectors. You know, let's do things that everyone in Davids County it would benefit from.
And Mr. Castlen, same question to you. As far as funding or spending priorities, if elected, what would they be?
Well, you know, being a retired police officer, of course, public safety, I realize the emphasis on that and how that impacts our community as well. But I also think of that not just spending, but using that money as investing. And like Benjamin Franklin said, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. And I believe that by investing in education, investing in our community, it's, you know, you might call it spending, but if you can invest in workforce development or the training of people that we want to be our employees for things, or even if we have something to invest in with our the startup capital that small businesses need when they get started. Those are the things that I would think would be the priorities for, as you say, spending, but I look at as investments.
The next question will be for you first. Mr. Castlen, when we talk about business in town, what do you think the biggest barriers for local entrepreneurs to open a small business and to thrive may be? And if you identify any, how would you address them?
Just like I just said, the startup capital for small businesses has got to be incredible. I mean, you think about what a small business has to have to get that start, if they're trying to get loans, and then to pay the loans back as they're still trying to make money to pay all their employees. And we can't just stop with helping somebody with the startup part of the business. Is what are the incentives afterwards? And I believe those are some of the barriers that small businesses are facing is, you know, people have great ideas, people have a way to make these things happen, but they don't have the capital for it. So they need some help from their community, and then once they get that started, they need some incentives to keep things going, and that's where we need to be.
And Mr. Warren, the question comes to you next. What do you think the biggest barriers are for local entrepreneurs to start and then thrive? And if you know of any of those, how would you address them?
Well, naturally, the startup cost that they incur, whether it be rent on spaces, you know, downtown, can be astronomical. The markets that a small business would jump into, they're so ever-changing, from day to day, week to week, you know, quarter to quarter. They're always trying to adapt and overcome while they're still starting up. You know, community support. Owensboro is really good about supporting small businesses, but, you know, we need to encourage everybody to keep with them. You know, drive past, you know, the bigger box stores and reach out to the small businesses and support them the best that we can.
And Mr. Wathen, same question to you. What do you think the biggest barriers are for local entrepreneurs to first get started and then to thrive? And if you've identified those barriers, how would you address them?
Well, I think somebody mentioned it. Startup capital is really very difficult for an entrepreneur to come up with. In fact, the current fiscal quarter, we identified this as a problem, and we put $1 million in an economic development fund for small businesses, because that's where most of our new jobs come from. They don't come from, they come from existing plants and existing small business. So we put $1 million in an economic fund, and we set up a committee, so if anybody wants a grant or a loan for a small business, or some of the manufacturing companies have even used it, they go to our committee, they apply for the loan or for the grant, and then I think altogether we have given money to, I think it's 8 different companies, and I think it's over 300 jobs. It may be over 400, but I'm not sure, so I'll go with a conservative number of 300. So startup capital and employees.
And Mr. Hayden, same question to you.
If you need a grant or a loan to start a small business, then you're not ready to start your small business. You didn't plan accordingly. It's not the public's responsibility to fund private business, period. The public needs to get its hands out of all these taxes, everything that government has their hands in, they need to get it out of. They don't have business there. You know, you want to talk about, oh, do they need a loan? Do they need a grant? Well, lower taxes will help people get into the point they're giving less money to the government and keep their own money to begin with. That's one of the biggest things. You know, and then, you know, planning and zoning has been beat to death, but they need to at least help these guys out. I wired a place not that long ago that they missed their opening date 3 different times because planning and zoning couldn't make up their mind. That needs to be addressed. That's a big one. Another one is I said it earlier, the out-of-town investors taking all this property. Small business local people can't afford that. And Owensboro's done nothing to solve it at all. They've done nothing to stand in the way.
Let's move from economic talk now to some social issues. And Mr. Hayden, you'll be first with this question. There's been a push for a fairness ordinance in recent years. Why do you think people feel it's necessary, and do you agree with them?
People might feel it's necessary because they're not educated on it. That's how I feel about it. Supreme Court's covered it. It's said and done. Quit trying. The government is not your personal bully to force people to agree with you. Period.
And Mr. Wathen, same question to you. When we talk about a push for a local fairness ordinance in recent years, why do you think people feel it's necessary, and do you agree with it?
I don't think it's necessary, and I'm the only one up here that actually had an opportunity to vote on it, and I voted no. And some of the reasons I voted no is because I don't think you can legislate people to be nice or to be fair or however you want to say it. And secondly, there's always unintended consequences on any bill or any law or any ordinance you pass. You have winners and you have losers, and so there's always unintended consequences. As he said, the Supreme Court's already addressed the issue on employment. You cannot discriminate for any reason like that. The Supreme Court took care of that, and then HUD has written rules and regulations since then saying that you cannot discriminate for housing. So, and then I'm aware of this because I am a realtor, but the realtors, they have a code of ethics, and written into that code of ethics says you cannot discriminate for all those reasons. So I firmly believe that the problem is taken care of.
Mr. Warren, same question.
Well, I first off believe that if we really feel the need for it, let's survey the people. Let's poll them, send out a questionnaire, see what the people are really thinking, not just the guys that are elected, guys and gals that are elected. If there's an issue in this town, everybody needs to know about it. Like everybody has mentioned before us, there's all kind of laws in place. There's people in place to help us. If you've been discriminated against for your housing, for your job, for anything, let them know. From the federal level to the state level, even down to the local level, they can help. So I would have to say, I want to ask the people and see what they really got to say, the whole voting public.
Mr. Castlen, question comes to you next. There's been a push in the last few years for a fairness ordinance. Why do you think people feel it's necessary, and do you agree?
So for the first part of course, there is the federal laws against it that you cannot discriminate against people, but those are for, as we speak with this, you look at why do people feel it's necessary, and you go back to the economic development and look at the cities nationwide and within the state of Kentucky that have fairness ordinance. And you look at the development that happens in those cities versus the ones that don't have it. Whether I agree with it or not, you look at the stats on it, and you would see that the ones with well, as we would call it, the non-discrimination is what it was, I believe, originally called, not the fairness ordinance. But those do better. Do I agree with it? I can't answer that without seeing what it is. And I know it was voted down once before, so obviously that's not the one that would work. If somebody proposed something, I would at least look at something before I said no, but I'd have to look at it too before I said yes.
Our next question, another issue that's been brought up recently, and if elected, possibility to be brought up again to the person that's elected. The judge did recently determine that the Confederate monument that sits on county property at the county courthouse is property of the fiscal court. So what specific steps would you take to carry out the decision previously made from to remove it from the courthouse lawn, and where do you think it should be placed, Mr. Castlen?
Considering that the fiscal court did, it does belong to fiscal court, and that decision has been made, unless there's something else that comes out of it with an appeal over these next 22 days or whatever they have left. There have been some ideas that have been posted about what can be done with it, and there's things like that to consider. What does the public want to do with it? Can we still move it to a location where it could be with other Confederate soldiers as some sort of monument? Can we have monuments that might that represent both sides, not necessarily at the courthouse, but at a location that would be more of a neutral location? And would we be able to consider it as a monument to all soldiers from the Civil War instead of just Confederate soldiers? Because, I mean, Owensboro or Kentucky, you had people from both sides. So we could make it something for everyone instead of just something that's against one side or for one side.
And Mr. Warren, same question to you. I'll make sure to restate it. A judge did determine that the Confederate monument is the property of the fiscal court. What specific steps would you take to carry out the decision previously made to remove it from the courthouse lawn, and where do you think it should be placed?
Well, if they're set on moving it off the courthouse lawn, I think they ought to do their homework. Let's find a reputable group, historian or someone, and use it as an educational tool to educate the future about the past, to, you know, of all walks along the way, even though not just that time period, whether it be a museum or a college, university, so many places that could benefit from it and signify, you know, some good use out of it and what it stood for. Mr.
Wathen, same question.
Again, I'm one of the fortunate ones because I got to vote on that. We put together a committee. I'm really not supposed to talk too much about this because Claude Porter says our county attorney, we have 30 days we have to wait, but I'm going to go ahead and dance around a little bit. We had a committee. They made a recommendation. Neither one of the museums wanted to take the statue. I worked with the art museum. We were trying to come up with a way to reconfigure the statue, maybe put two statues together, one representing the North, one representing the South. I think most of the people, I think there's really three groups of people in Davis County. There's one group that adamantly wants it moved. There's another group that adamantly wants it to stay, and they're relatively small. And then there's the biggest group that, you know, they're not as concerned about it as either one of the other groups. So I think I'm sorry I'm out of time.
Mr. Hayden, I'll restate the question for you too, by the way. A judge did just determine that it's property of the fiscal court. What steps would you take to carry out the decision that's been previously made to remove it from the lawn, and where do you think it should be placed?
Yeah, the court said, huh? Well, what about what the people say? Everybody I've talked to is really tired of this cancel culture. They're really tired of a small group of people deciding what's best for everyone else because their feelings are hurt. And I would argue, let's put it front and center. Let's find somewhere else. That's fine. We've got Indian statues, which how much do we pay for that on Frederica? We've got buffalo statues. Let's find another spot. That's fine. Let's find another spot. It's a great idea, by the way. Have a Union soldier, have a Confederate soldier. It's a great idea. Let's find a place up front and center that people can see this thing. Let's not stuff it away somewhere in a corner of the county where no one's ever going to see it.
Well, next question, we'll move back into economic development. And Mr. Hayden, the question will be to you. Why do you think Davis County has missed out on some major economic development projects that have been announced in recent months? And if elected, what would you do to ensure that the county is in consideration for future projects?
Playing and zoning's been beat to death. They need to learn to play ball, get past that. We don't have a very capable workforce. That's the first thing. Just trying to find somebody that doesn't feel entitled and wants to work hard, that understands that you have to start somewhere and work your way up. That's been the biggest deal for my company anyway, and several other ones that I've talked to, small business. Not small business as in 100 employees, small business as in 3 people, a really small business. It's hard to find guys. We don't have trade schools pumping out guys like we used to. We need a lot of people in construction industry. We need people that want to work with their hands, that love to work with their hands, that don't listen to the rhetoric that you're not going to be anything and you're never going to go anywhere without a 4-year degree. We need people that we can train, and it all starts in high school. It all starts right out of high school, but that's what we need. We don't have the workforce.
Mr. Wathen, same question to you. Why do you feel like Davis County has missed out on some of these major economic projects?
Well, I don't agree with the premise of your question that we weren't considered, because we were. We have an economic development commission here in town, and they work very hard. Whenever there's so many variables when you talk about why a large company chooses a different location, a different city. Some of it, the thing I hear the most whenever I go to different meetings and around the state is, number one, is do you have the population that is educated and ready to go to work and fulfill the needs of that employer? Are those employees trained? Some of the things is interstate, how close are you to the manufacturing facility that you're going to sell most of your product to? So one of the things that we've done is to try to get together with the OCTC and help them to produce more graduates that can work in the factories. In fact, I think they graduated 600 people today, or yesterday and today together, or today and tomorrow together, 600 graduates.
Mr. Warren, same question to you. Why do you think we may have missed out on some major economic development projects, and what would you do to ensure the county is considered in the future?
Well, Davis County is not set up for everything that comes along the way. I'm glad that all these companies are studying us to see what we have to offer to them, but there's more factors than just, per se, the workforce. These companies, they look at the end user down the road. How stable are they? If they're 2 counties over and that end user or the next guy in the supply chain is moving away, it's not beneficial for them to stay here. Many things, when we do get turned down for something, why are we not going back to the drawing board and saying, hey, why did we miss out on this? And then approach that company again and say, what can we do better, or what can we do next time to do this, to get them to stick around and look at us harder? We seem to fight each other like it's been brought up in the past tonight. We fight each other against so many things. If we can all just come to the table and lay it all out there and sort it out, I feel like we'd go farther.
And Mr. Castlen, same question.
We have to, and I don't feel like we do miss out on some things. We don't miss out on everything. But we do have to have, of course, workforce development. We always have to have a ready and able workforce. So those are, with that, we also have to, be good about bringing the industry here or open to things that are here. I look at like the rick houses that were with O.Z. Tyler, which is now Green River, and how we had the opportunity to build those rick houses here in Davis County, but we were unable to work with them to help to meet their needs as well. Seems like a simple thing, and now you can go out take the Natural Parkway and go to Bowling Green, and you can see where all that tax money that was not an occupational tax and would not be hurting anybody that lives here is now it's making money for Ohio County. So we have to be able to work with the people who are willing to be here as well.
That ends the question portion of the forum. Thanks, everybody, for keeping us on time. We really appreciate it, and that gives you time now to make your 60-second closing statements. Mr. Castlen.
First, I want to say thank you to everybody that's put this on tonight, put it together. I know it's quite a task to do. I want to say that my priorities as I look at what Davis County needs, I look at our public safety, I look at our economy, and I look at the leadership that is needed for our county. And our public safety is always a priority. Businesses and people have to be safe. They have to feel safe to be able to stay here. Our economy, it always needs something with our local government as well to help be a driving force amongst other locations. And for leadership, we need leaders in our fiscal court that are able to make decisions, that are able to work with others, and that can lead us on to this next, to the future. And that's why I'm asking for your vote on May 17th.
Mr. Warren, your closing statement.
I want to thank everybody as well for being here tonight and giving me the opportunity to speak. There's so many issues facing Davis County today, and together with transparency and open lines of communication, we can solve these issues and move ourselves forward. Now, I like to, say I don't have all the answers, but I can promise you that through hard work and diligence and with everybody's help, we can find those that do and solve our problems and find solutions to the events that arise with us. I'll leave you with this. It's amazing what we can accomplish when nobody cares who gets the credit. Once again, thank you, and vote for Dustin Warren, please.
Mr. Wathen, 60 seconds for your closing statement.
I want to go back to something I said at the last forum, is that, we're in a Republican primary. The goal of the Republican primary is to find Republicans who believe in our core value, our core Republican values. And I just want to mention that Chris and Dustin both are, they switched over to be from Democrats to Republican right before they signed up to run for office. So a lot of people would call that Republican in name only. I have a clear record. I'm running on my record. You don't have to guess with me. It's no blue skies, no promises. You know exactly what you're going to get when you look for me. Look at me and think about voting for me. I'll ask you a question. If you were going to hire somebody that's going to run a $70 million budget, would you want somebody that's done the job before? Would you want somebody who's a business person? Or would you want rookies? I'm not a rookie. I'm a businessman, and I've done the job for 11 and a half years, and I know what I'm doing. I know how to make things happen and make it work.
Thank you, Mr. Wathen. Mr. Hayden, your 60 seconds for your closing statement.
All right. I'm pro-Second Amendment. I'm pro-life 100%. Those are two things that's never discussed and pretty important. The way I look at it is people's got an easy decision. You got one guy up here who's been spending your money for a decade. If you're happy with that, you know what to do with that. You got two other guys, all they've talked about is spending your money, and this is what I want to do, and this is what I want to do. I'm the only conservative up here that wants to save your money. That's what I'm running on. I want to cut the fat. I want to trim it down. You got to get comfortable being uncomfortable before you can do the bigger stuff. If you want a guy that's a Christ-centered guy that is a family man, that wants to make a place that his kids want to grow up in, I'm your guy. Vote Patrick Hayden.
That officially wraps up our 7th session of the day. Thanks to everybody for taking time to watch the stream at home. Thanks to each of the candidates for taking time out of your evening to be here. We also want to thank the Bluegrass Music Hall of Fame and Museum for allowing us to host this town hall here in their facility in downtown Owensboro. And thank you to our presenting sponsors, Castlen Steel and Daniel Dick, State Farm Insurance Agent, and supporting sponsor, Mudd's Furniture. We'd like to leave you with a message that voting is already opened. You can vote in the early days of the election tomorrow. Election Day, primary election day, will be on Tuesday. And keep in mind, even though this race is for the West County Commission race, it is a county-wide vote. No matter where you live in Davis County, you can vote for one of these gentlemen on stage. We have another race coming up in about 20 minutes or so. That'll be the East County Commission. But between now and then, thank you to the gentlemen for being up here running for West County Commission, your candidates.